And I ended up going 204 days without seeing him. He was moved without my knowledge. And at one point, I thought I would never see him again. Just in case something happens to me, I want him to know that I loved him, and I was thinking about him every day.
Studies show that children raised in one-parent households are more likely to suffer from a range of negative effects. And yet, divorce courts routinely just relegate fathers to the status of a weekend visitor. Mark Ludwig is working to change that. I want you to welcome the founder of Americans for Equal Shared Parenting, Mark Ludwig. Mark, good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, 80% of the time when there is a divorce, which is always unfortunate, I always say the only real winners in a divorce are the lawyers.
Exactly.
But 80% of the time, the judge just arbitrarily gives custody to the mom, and the dad is kind of left out.
Exactly, and unfortunately, most people aren't aware of the situation until it happens to them.
Yeah.
I wasn't. And 12 years ago, if someone mentioned there was a problem, I wasn't aware it was an issue until it happened to me.
So when it happened to you, unfortunately, you and your spouse split, and a child, a son involved, you, I'm sure, thought, okay, well, I'll get him halftime, she'll get him halftime, we'll share this. Didn't quite work out like that, huh?
Yeah, my situation, out of respect for my son, I try to not divulge too many details about his mother and everything, because I firmly believe that two parents need to realize they've got a child.
Yeah.
And we need to keep our problems to ourselves. But yeah, there were some issues with his mother that I had a challenge with. And I ended up going 204 days without seeing him. He was moved without my knowledge. And at one point, I thought I would never see him again. And it was horrible. I started writing a journal during that period of time, because I thought, just in case something happens to me, I want him to know that I loved him, and I was thinking about him every day. So I started writing to him every night before I went to bed, and I still do it to this day. He's got 42 books now of journals.
42 books of journals?
Every night before I go to bed for 11 years now, I've written to him. So his entire life is journaled, and when he turns 21, I'm going to given to him. And I've tried to not de-edify his mom, but let him know how much I cared about him and how much I was thinking about him during everything that went on. So
this became, first, a personal issue, you trying to make sure that you could be involved in your son's life. At what point did you decide, you know, this is a bigger thing than me? There are dads all over the country who are being shut out of their children's lives, and they really have a hard pathway going through court to get either joint custody or sometimes even simple visitation. When did you decide you were going to do something bigger than just fight for your own son's case?
Well, I'd been pretty active in St. Louis in the community. I'd served on a lot of board of directors and was very politically active. And so once it happened to me, I started getting phone calls that started trickling in, and then it became like a tidal wave saying, hey, the same thing happened to me. The same thing happened to me. And I finally decided, you know what, I've got a lot of political connections. Why don't I start working on trying to get legislation passed? And my biggest passion, believe it or not, is not even for me to make the change, but to educate people across the country so they can make the change.
What kind of legislative things have to happen in a state in order to change that pathway?
The biggest key that we're working on at the statewide level is what we call a 50-50 rebuttable presumption.
Yeah.
And what that says is when you walk into a courtroom, the child should be presumed to have equal access to those parents the same way they did the day before the divorce. Now, the judge still has discretion, but you don't arbitrarily pick a winner and a loser, which is what happens nowadays. Nowadays, someone walks into an attorney's office, and most attorneys will say, look, you know, you're not going to get 50-50 in our state.
Yeah.
One of you is going to win, and one of you is going to lose.
So it turns parents into adversaries.
Exactly.
And then the children are injured by that because they see this even bigger fight. It's a horrible thing. And I mean, we've kind of embodied it into our law. When I'm thinking about how this could be changed, I'm also thinking, what happens when it doesn't change? When dads are left out of their children's lives, or for that matter, when a mom is. So what are some things that statistically happen to a child?
Well, and that's it, is statistics show, and I'll fight just as hard for a mother as I will for a father, because I'm not fighting for the parent, I'm fighting for the child. That child needs both parents in their lives.
Great point to make. You're not fighting for the parent,
exactly.
You're fighting for the child. I'm so glad you said that. That's beautiful.
You know, regardless of how I feel personally about my son's mother, that's his mom.
Yeah.
And she adds value to his life that I can't add. I believe that's why God designed it for two people to create a child. We both have strengths and we both have weaknesses. And we compensate for those when we're raising a child. And statistics have shown, from a fatherless standpoint, a child growing up without a father, 80 to 95 or to 94% of all teenage runaways, teenage pregnancies, teenage drug problems, teenage behavioral problems, 80 to 94% of all of those, the one common thing is they grew up without a dad.
Wow.
And yes,
That's
we do have...
a staggering amount of
it's phenomenal.
Social disruption.
And you think of how much of that is created, 21 million kids going through the family court system that are relegated to a visitor with one of their parents.
Wow.
With myself, my son misses out on the experience of dad getting ready for school, dad doing homework. I become the Disney dad. So it's fun to see dad on weekends, but as a parent, my responsibility to my child is different than being a fun dad. He needs to see that dad can get him ready for school, that dad can do homework, that dad has work to do during the week. And he misses that experience.
And the dad can also tell him no sometimes. So it's not always, dad's going to say yes no matter what you say.
Well, and that's it too. Most kids in this situation know that from about noon on Sunday on, if they want to get a favor, it's probably going to, because most dads realize at 5 o'clock on Sunday, they're not going to see their kids all week.
Yeah.
And so they don't want the last impression to be, wow, I got in trouble right before I had to go back to mom's. So most kids have figured out they can get away with quite a bit more on a Sunday afternoon, which isn't healthy for a child.
It's so important what you're doing, and I want to tell our audience how they can learn more about the organization you've created, Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. I know there are parents out there who need to get in touch and to get involved, maybe at their state legislative level as well. You can visit the website and follow them on social media. It's on your screen. I hope you'll jot it down. I hope you'll look into it because, as Mark so eloquently said, this isn't about the parents. It's truly about the children.